I've been working with the structure of deep space, or astrophysics, for nearly 60 years. My good friend Charles Jane, I think this was 1976, I was about the only people I'm aware of who were interested in this subject, maybe Charles Harvey in the UK, back in the early 1970s. And of course, there was Theodore Landscheid, whose every word on the subject is worth reading. Now, many astrologers have asked me, what is the meaning of points like the galactic center or the supergalactic center astrologically? And of course, I could rattle off their coordinates, maybe a few other particulars, or I could graph it out for you. But if you're really interested in understanding the basic nature of cosmic structure, at least from an astrological point of view, see if you can get through the following, what I'm going to talk about. And I'll take it slow, and let's think it through. Now, a central idea for understanding at least recent cosmic research is the use and value of the various astronomical coordinate systems like the geocentric system, the heliocentric system, the galactic system, the supergalactic system, and so on. And these at best representing the different levels of our experience. Not just one level, but many levels. And each of these systems has itself a center. And the word center for us can mean both the same and yet different things to different individuals. Take our own center, for example, right here and now while you're reading this. Or we could say the center about which our life appears to revolve for each of us is sacred, because that's where we're at. And it's sacred to us in its ability to reveal or communicate to us the essence or the identity of who we are, at least at the moment. And the center for each of us always refers inward to our essence. And yet the center or lifeline of one individual might be their new car at one point in life, or a new wife or husband or child at another point. At each point, the meaning of center, what's central to us, is inviolate. Although the outward form of what we take for our lifeline, each of us, to that center is constantly, it's always changing. Now, the different kinds of center I've found, and now we're talking astrology, which is the meaning of astronomy, may be conveniently expressed in the various coordinate systems, astronomical coordinate systems of astronomy. And their meaning, at least as defined by astrology, which is basically, and astrology to me is basically cultural astronomy, the meaning of astronomy. Otherwise, in my opinion, it's not astrology, something else, psychism or who knows what. Anyway, the origin or center that we choose at any given time should most correspond to the center of gravity. That means the kind of question, the kind of inquiry or level of being that we're considering, where we're at, what we're interested in. For example, for a study of the personal differences, the circumstances, and the specific terms of our life, traditionally we use the horizon system, the horizon coordinate systems of azimuth and altitude in relation to the zodiac with its familiar midheaven, ascendant houses, etc. And studies of the general terms of mankind, which we call mundane astrology, that involves consideration from the center of the earth, or geocentric astrology, right ascension and declination. And this is traditional. But for a study of the motion and relation of all the planetary bodies in our solar system and at least as a functioning whole, then the heliocentric ecliptic system, with its origin at the center of the system, the sun, would be appropriate. And in that coordinate system, we would examine the archetypes of life and consciousness, and in general, questions traditionally referred to religion, the things that last. Perhaps more recently, considered by many as psychological. And as for me, I call the heliocentric chart the Dharma chart, the chart of our Dharma relating to our Dharma path. In like manner, galactocentric and supergalactocentric coordinates are appropriate for dynamical studies of the larger and more cosmic structure of our reality. I mean, they are all there, and they're there all the time. Yet, for each of us, there are moments and even days when our awareness is truly of or in sync with cosmic dimensions, go in and out. Some days we're way out there. In other words, there are different levels of truth or reality. And what is essential as the kernel of truth to one person, as the whole enchilada, may appear to another person as just one example among many of a larger ordering, a larger structure. We don't all see the same. And when we each refer to the center around which we personally revolve, we share in that idea of centers, and yet different ones among us, we revolve around or consider what is central, what is essential differently. We can agree on that. I believe that all reference to different centers at different times simply points out the lack of identity that we have. Or another way of saying this is that these seemingly different levels or centers, these different centers in themselves form a line, a continuum, a continuing experience. Life goes on. Or some form of, and that's some form of identification, and starting with each of us and reaching out toward for us eternity. Anyway, some of this is just going to be abstract, and as to quote from Gerard Manley Hopkins, a poet, suck any sense from that who can. So if you can get something out of this, bless you. If you can't, I'm sorry. Anyway, all of these larger systems, such as the solar system, the galaxy, and so on, include us within their reach, like a mother holds a child within her womb. We are the children. We are the particular representatives of the Earth and the solar system. But we also are representatives of the galaxy, the supergalaxy, and anything beyond. We're in there. Their nature, their identity and self is also identical with our own. It's not different. In fact, it's fair to say that we have come through all this outer space and through all the time there is and has been to be here now, to be ourselves. Now, our day-to-day consciousness continually circulates from more particular awareness perhaps of our person, to a more cosmic awareness and back again. We go out of the body, so to speak, and we return to the body. We're all around it and all about it. And we do this all the time. From an astrological perspective, astrologers, the exercise of these various astrological coordinate systems, using them, are just like exercising our muscles, because they can serve to remind us that all reference to centers, in fact, all referral of any kind, indicates an attempt to achieve some kind of circulation, some circle or cycle, some circulation or identity. We're trying to identify, and we're trying to remember, which means put back together, cohere, or remind ourselves and keep in mind constantly who we already are and have always been. Okay, this is a section which I'm going to call all identification on our part is simply circulation, or an attempt to circulate, an attempt to cohere, to be coherent, and to keep that coherency. So in other words, all discovery on our part, our interests and stuff, is self-discovery. And what we call identification is, in fact, simple circulation. So cosmic events and cosmic structure are a very consistent and most stable reference frame through which to come to know ourselves, and that's going to take some explaining. The use of these inclusive meta-coordinate systems, like galaxy, anything beyond our Earth, the Sun, solar system, is not the symbolic process that some people suggest. But in this case, the symbol, in fact, is also real. We're actually living this. We're not working with analogies, or if we are, the analogy is complete down to the specific example through which we discover the virtual process itself, our body, our life. So another way to say that is that life, God, or spirit, whatever you want to call it, is no beggar. Life is not creating a symbolically true, but specifically disappointing creation, such that we would have to touch it up, retouch this creation, or somehow we're supposed to make the ends meet. The ends already meet. It's already complete. It's already fully present. We're just not aware of it. And it's we who will first change our attitude. That's the big thing, our view. And then we will change and gradually change our approach to this creation. This samsara, as the Buddhists call it. And eventually, maybe we can transmigrate to its better half, which is called nirvana, or enlightenment. And these changes in attitude on our part, this reorientation in our approach is what is unchanging or everlastingly true in life, because they represent the specific areas where the exercise and use of various astronomical coordinate systems of understanding our life become important to present-day astrologers. To discover, each of us, our own orientation and inclinations, our inclinations, that we are already perfect representatives of all space and time. We're the spacemen. We're out there. We're acting out in detail through our persons events of a so-called cosmic nature, events that may have occurred in or occur in space at remote distances and times. Yet it's happening to us right here. So how could that be? Supernova and black holes are not simply some ever-distant cataclysmic events, but are rather part of our own everyday life experience, acted out in fact by persons within the galaxy of our own experience. So the goal of our study, the goal of our inquiry into astrology is to represent, to represent, to reveal the nature of ourselves and our ultimate circulation, connection, and identity in the heart of the earth, and also the heart of the sun, the heart of the galaxy, the heart of the supergalaxy, and so on. So, again, in a word, I would simply say all identification is circulation, or an attempt. A continuing, our continuance, our circle, our circling, our cycling. And all inquiry, questioning, all search can but end in the discovery of ourself, of our own self over and over again, whether written small in the corners of our personal daily struggle, or writ large across the very heavens itself. Again, all self-discovery, all identification is simply rediscovery and simple circulation. Okay, now I'm calling this section, local attraction. Because as we look into the sun during the course of a year, and we describe the qualities of those who are born in the various astrological signs, we succeed in defining not the position of the sun, but rather that of the earth in relation to the sun. And of course, as astrologers, this should be second nature to us, and this illustrates what I consider an important axiom. That is, all inquiry into higher centers does not reveal the nature of that center in itself, but rather reveals our relationship to that center. This is what I call the alchemy of identity. Be sure to understand this, please, and perhaps you want to read it again. That all inquiry into greater centers, something greater than ourselves, does not reveal the nature of that center, what it's about, but rather reveals our relationship to that center. And this is the alchemy of identity. In other words, higher centers, we could think of teachers that we look up to. Higher centers serve to mirror or reflect. That's their function. Their nature is to reveal to us not their intrinsic nature, but our own. And revelation of any kind is the sign of communication. I mean, we have inspiration, epiphany, revelation of any kind is the sign of communication with greater centers or planes. Revelation not of some far-off, distant entity or God, but always a revelation of ourselves, of the spirit that's within us here now. Oh, in a discussion as to the qualities of the centers, astrologically, of the sun, the center of the galaxy, the center of the supergalaxy, we can understand that inquiry into the direction of the sun, for example, will reveal to us the nature of Earth. And inquiry into the nature of the galaxy will serve to reveal the nature of our own sun, heliocentric. And inquiry into the supergalaxy will serve to reveal the nature of our galaxy. So, to repeat, the idea presented here is that it is the very nature of higher centers to reflect, and we respond and embrace more particular or local centers. And that could be us. Anyway, at this point, another very significant axiom of astrology emerges. That is that the experience of physical attraction, traction means to draw across or towards. Now, the experience of physical attraction or gravity is primarily the sign of a local phenomenon. And this gets complicated, but you have to think about it. I had to think about it. For instance, we directly respond to the attraction that we call gravity of the center of the Earth. And our Earth responds to the center of the sun, and the sun to the galaxy, and so forth. Yet, as individuals, we are not aware of the pull of the sun on the entire Earth. Or to repeat, the point here is that any attraction or gravity that we feel, any attraction to something, someone, is always a sign of a local phenomenon. Please think about this as you can. Anyway, perhaps this will make more sense in our practical affairs if we put it this way. A sign of our communication with higher, with vaster, or centers, or spirit, or God, is not a physical gravity or graveness, or not a local attraction, but always an enlightenment. It's always a releasing and our accepting of the nature of the particular terminals of our existence, and release of this sense of duality. Knowledge of so-called inner planes exhibits itself to us through a process of reflection, like a mirror, a mirroring of ourself, rather than through the presentation to us of something new or somehow other. The mirroring, this reflection, mirroring means we see our own essential nature in the reflection of the teacher. The teacher is just a long-gone mirror. And the traditional word is reflection. We reflect, or we are reflected. Now, when we ourselves begin to reflect, our life changes. And by reflect, don't think about thinking, but rather think about mirroring, about reflection, as in reflecting something other than ourselves. This is just astrological stuff. In other words, higher centers higher than we are, mirror or reveal to us, they reflect ourself, and they do not exhibit in themselves a greater intrinsic attractiveness or gravity than we already have. To bring this down even more practically, to make it as obvious as I can, we each meet in life individuals who have a great impact on us. And following the above rule, those to whom we feel a great attraction toward, love, and who hold great power over us. These are only a local phenomenon. They're like basically at our level. They're not really teachers for us. This is the message here. True teachers for us. True teachers affect us with their presence by making us realize not something about them, not about their own attractiveness, but about our own attractiveness and essential nature, not theirs. We learn to appreciate and accept ourselves. Now, I know you need to consider and think about this because I had to consider and think about it. In other words, inquiry into real higher centers reveal to us our own essential sense of attractiveness. In fact, it's the nature of higher centers, like teachers, to be non-material or non-physical by definition, meaning they embrace us. They embrace us whole cloth. And our inquiry into this realm is limited only by our fear of and our reluctance to see ourselves in their vast mirror. They can scare us in the sense that we're not used to looking at ourselves directly. And we're not used to looking through the back of the mirror. That's always been considered a sign of initiation. Anyway, I know this is tough. To sum this up, I could simply say the greater or higher centers mirror or reflect our own self and nature, revealing to us our essential identity as already a part of the larger whole, and enlightening us of or from our graveness, our burden, sense of loneliness and separation from the whole. That's a key thought. That's what reflection of a teacher does to us. Anyway, getting back to talking astrology, although this is talking astrology, with this idea in mind, let's resume our investigation as to the nature of the galactic center, 26 degrees Sagittarius, the supergalactic center, 1 degrees Libra. We can expect the galactic center to exercise considerably greater physical attraction for us than that of the local supergalactic center. In fact, one of the identifying features of the galactic center at work, and that we can realize it through looking at charts, as revealed in chart analysis and research by Charles Harvey and Reinhold Ebertin, many others, is a certain macho-like quality, galactic center, a sense of strength and power, perhaps typified in the zeal and self-righteousness of certain extreme religious factions. Or more simply put, a tendency in the qualities of Sagittarius and Capricorn of sternness, of physical action or power. Look for it. Another way to put this is that the great ability and power of a galactic center, as represented when strongly aspected in the natal chart, is to move and attract others, movements. We find this feature in the charts of great political and religious leaders who possess the power to move nations to action. The galactic center figures in these charts in all the traditional astrological ways, by conjunctions, and other aspects of the galactic center, whatever you use. Now, we can contrast this macho-like quality found in the galactic center to the qualities that indicate the presence of the supergalactic center in our natal charts. Here we look to the traditional qualities of Virgo and Libra, which are care, service, reflection, love. Perhaps in my case, I mean, for me, perhaps the best representative of the supergalactic nature occurs in Eastern Buddhism, in the idea of compassion, and especially in the beloved figure of the Bodhisattva, a being who is literally devoted to the service of all life until ignorance vanishes in every one of us in complete realization. Bodhisattvas, so said, are awake. We do not find the supergalaxy center as physically powerful, macho, and as moving as we do the galactic center. In the West, the traditional God figures, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, are more fierce and full of fire and brimstone, that approach, than are that of the endless care and service as typified in some of the Eastern religions and traditions, as in the concept of Bodhisattva. In fact, only in our times, in these times that we are now living, are the servile qualities associated with Virgo, sun sign, caretaking, coming to be appreciated as a power in themselves. In other words, the supergalaxy center represents a non-material, or essentially a more passive power, a power to help things pass, rather than the more active kind of macho power as seen in the galactic center. Try to wrap this up. In the Bible, it repeatedly says, this came to pass, that came to pass. The passive genius is not active in the doing of things, but rather is active in the undoing of things. That is, helping things to pass from this world, not to make them more compact and durable. This is a non-material or spiritual task, and a kind of genius equally to be valued, along with a more active one who does things or brings things to be in this world. That would be the galaxy center. Anyway, we may see these two archetypes at work in the world, and they may be conveniently studied in their local representatives, which I've talked about, the galactic center and the supergalactic center, and their various planes and inclinations. Now I'm calling this next section, We Are So Inclined. It's about inclinations, what we're leaning toward. We all know the old occult maxim, as above, so below. But after another manner. As above, so below, but after another manner. That's a familiar occult maxim, and it might be the perfect description of what is involved in the various astrological coordinate systems and their transformations. So I'm going to try to explain this. It's pretty easy to communicate the concept of wheels within wheels, as above, so below. Larger systems containing within themselves smaller systems, like the nested Matryoshka dolls, one thing in the other. And this has resulted in the popular idea of chakras, or planes. Often the planets are used to represent chakras, planes of our experience, and the sense of ourself as an ascending hierarchy of levels, each level inclusive of the preceding level. What's not generally understood, what's not generally appreciated, but becomes increasingly clear when we examine the actual structure of the various cosmic systems, is not only the idea of larger systems embracing smaller systems, like the solar system within the galactic system, the local system, whatever, different levels. But more important, or equally important to understand, is that each larger system not only is inclusive of lesser systems, but it's also differently inclined to the preceding one at a different inclination or angle. And it should be understood that aside from the often quite tedious mathematics involved in coordinate transformations, there's an accompanying philosophical or psychological adjustment to be made, which I call an empowerment, a shift in viewpoint on our part, a change in the approach, our attitude to the subject. This transformation of coordinate really merits some attention. We need to learn about it. In fact, it's actually key. And so there's not only an expansion in perspective, as above, so below, but when we move to a larger coordinate system, but also a reordering of our sense of direction, inclination. This is what makes it so difficult for an individual to see beyond their present dimension and to get a feel for what is perhaps in his or her inevitable future. There exists what are termed event horizons. Horizons beyond which we cannot understand how life can go on. We can't see beyond that. An example of some event horizons that we all know would be puberty, marriage, childbirth, and of course death, to name a few of the classics. We can't see beyond our present sphere. And this is totally true of any chakra studies. You cannot see beyond the present sphere into what our future might be like in these other dimensions, because we cannot help but conceive of these events in terms of our present line of thought, a linear line, the line along which we imagine we are going now and will always be going. Not true. Change of inclination sets us completely on a different line. And to pass through these event horizons involves, on our part, total change. And that means some reorientation. This is hard to get. And we do not watch our own change. We can't see it because we are what is in fact in transition or change. We are changing. And when we come out of it, we're a different person. We have a different view. Anyway, the idea presented here should be obvious. The crossing of an event horizon, puberty, marriage, involves simple reorientation on our part. Call it a change of approach, change of view, or our attitude changes. And the new dimension or sphere that we come into, that we enter, turns out after our adjustment or getting used to it, that there's a change, always reveals our previous or past life in or chakra in new light. We see our old behavior and opinions differently with our new approach to life. And this is very difficult to communicate the difference to someone who has not yet had that experience of reorientation. Just like someone who's not married is not going to understand certain things that it's a club you join. This is called initiation, or as my first teacher used to spell the word, initiate, initiate, initiate. Now, and what has changed perhaps most is our inclination. We no longer want the same things we did want, or now we want them in a different manner. We're no longer inclined. We don't feel like the way that we used to feel, because our life now revolves around a different center than before. Perhaps it's a wife, a new wife, or a child, or a new car, or whatever, for instance. We're differently inclined. This different inclination is key, especially in astrology, And it's pretty much we're unaware of it as a group. So many of these principles that I'm presenting here are graphically revealed through the study and learning to exercise the various astronomical, astrological coordinate systems. We can draw the charts out. We can look at it. We can compare. For instance, what appears in one system, perhaps, as isolated, as singular entities that are apparently unconnected, when we view it in the perspective of another system, a higher system, different inclination, this can define the shape of the system itself. How often in our lives does some singularity, something pop up, appear as if an other, a foreign entity, something we've never experienced before? But later, when we have experienced several of this type, they are recognized as representatives of a kind of group that at first was unfamiliar, perhaps even scary to us. This same event becomes recognizable to us and loses its threatening quality. I cannot apparently recommend strongly enough, I'll try, how important it is as astrologers to exercise, to actually use and get to know, become familiar with these various ways or systems for understanding our universe so that astrologers can begin practicing it today. And we could just say, here's a list of some of the systems you might want to consider. When you study a coordinate system like the heliocentric coordinate system, or the equatorial coordinate system of right ascension and declination, keep in mind that these systems are more than just juggling numbers. They each offer an insight into different areas of our life, and each can be charted astrologically, and each can be interpreted. It is amazing that we can even do this. So just to go over just some of the lists that you might want to look into. These are some of the cosmic systems and their centers. Of course, there's the Earth-Moon system. As astrologers, we know that. Then there's the solar system, with the center at the sun. That's heliocentrics. As a group, we don't know that. We know of it, and maybe we tried to apply our geocentric astrological techniques to it. Our geocentric techniques to heliocentric. That doesn't work. I mean, or better said, it totally works, but it gives us the same data that we're used to getting from the geocentric system. We have to look in deeply into the heliocentric system to be initiated into it and to see what it can provide that the geocentric cannot. And beyond that, we have what's called the local system, sometimes called Gould's belt. Now, this is a group of some 10 to the 8 stars, of which our sun is one member. The local system, originally thought to be kind of a minute galaxy, and itself embedded within the Milky Way, our galaxy, is considered to be an ellipsoid of, 700 by 200 parsecs, with the long axis parallel to the new galactic coordinates 160 degrees 340, and located in the Orion Cygnus spiral arm. The centroid of the local system is in Virgo at about 15 degrees 25 minutes, with its nodes to the ecliptic at 10 degrees 22 minutes of Sagittarius North Node and Gemini to reverse. The system is inclined to our zodiac, the ecliptic, by about 66 degrees. I know this is tough, but I'm saying you can go look this up. I have a book, The Astrology of Space, that spells it all out, so you don't have to write it all down. Beyond that, we have what's called the local galaxy, our Milky Way. It's estimated to contain 10 to the 11th stars. And the galaxy is a disk-like structure with a diameter of some 30,000 parsecs, a central ellipsoidal nucleus of about 4,000 parsecs, and an average disk thickness of several hundred parsecs. The nodes in the center are about 26 degrees of Sagittarius, Gemini, in relation to our ecliptic. And the sun is located, our sun is located some 10,000 parsecs from the galaxy center. Okay, then we have what's called the local group of galaxies. The local group of galaxies includes about a score of member galaxies, the largest of which is the Andromeda galaxy, M31. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, and M31 and Andromeda revolve around a common center of mass, roughly in the direction of 27 degrees of the sign Aries. And finally, this as far as I know, that's as far as I will go, the local supergalaxy, which I spent years studying when it was just being really discovered, and astronomers couldn't quite place it, and our telescopes weren't big enough to really see it. But our galaxy is part of a vast, flattened supersystem of galaxies, some 40 megaparsecs in diameter, and its center of the supergalaxy is 1 degree of Libra, and it's located in the Great Virgo cluster, some 12 to 16 megaparsecs from the sun. Anyway, that's about it. This article, I have to say, just touches upon the value of astrology as a form of cultural astronomy. And I published in 1976 an entire book called Astrophysical Directions, just on these topics. And that was a result of years and years of research on my part into astrophysics. And that book is available as a free book today. I've renamed it to The Astrology of Space. And you can get it, a free book, at the website spiritgrooves.net, spiritgrooves.net. Thanks for listening.